Great. Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Rajdeep this side. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ReWiser. And in today's webinar, we are going to talk about everything about the SAT test, right? So we are going to deep dive into the SAT and we'll try and understand about the entire exam. We'll also take one more important aspect. Not sure how many parents and students are already aware. Starting March 2023, SAT is going for a change, and there's a lot of changes which are coming up. So I'll also try and incorporate that change in one of the PPT. So please do hear it out up until the end. So the format is pretty simple. For about another 30-35 minutes, I'm gonna go through the entire presentation. If in case you guys have any question, please put it on the chat section. I'll be taking up all the Q&As at the end of the session, right? So either you can put all your question at the end, or you can start putting it up right away, but I'll be taking up the questions right at the end, right? With that, let me start with the presentation now. Yes, so I think the topics that we are going to cover today is we'll try and understand the SAT current test framework, which will be active from now until May of 2023, March of 2023. Then we're going to look at each of the sections which are part of SAT, which is the reading, writing, and maths, what each section entails, how long the test is, how many questions, what are the question types and everything. How does the score submission work with different colleges? How is SAT different from other competitive tests? How to ace the SAT test? What is our pedagogy for SAT and ACT prep? Along with the timelines, right? When should you be doing this exam? What is the right time to do it? And so on and so forth. So we'll be covering all of that in this. So first of all, so ReWiser as a company is a high school support company which assists students worldwide to achieve their high school academic goals. We largely cater to students from grade 9 to grade 12. In our area of expertise lies in two segments. The first one is test prep. Under test prep, we cater to PSAT, SATs, and ACT prep. We also do AP prep, which is the advanced placement. And we'll be doing one webinar every month, and next webinar we're going to talk about ACT. We'll be talking about APs. So if in case you're interested, in future you can join back for understanding more about these tests as well. The second vertical that we have is in the academic tutoring space, wherein we help students for IGCSE, IB, and A-level academic tutoring, subject tutoring as well. So far, we are about 5-year-old company now. We've catered to about 3,000 odd students in 6+ countries. That is what we have done so far. Jumping on to the first thing, which is the SAT test framework. The entire duration of test as of now is 3 years long. There are a total of 4 sections in this test. It's a general aptitude test, which contains majority 2 things, which is English and maths. And under English, you have reading and writing, which we will see in the further slides. It is required by most of the US colleges, and it also helps in many other geographies. When I say many other geographies, so I mean Canada, Singapore, Australia, Switzerland, Hong Kong, right? So these are few universities. I would request everyone to be just on mute. Okay, great, thanks. So these are the different geographies where SAT test is also acceptable, though may not be mandatory, but yes, they do provide you an option to submit this test score. When I say required for most of the US colleges, I think it's very, very important to understand 2 terms here, right? There's something called test optional, and there's something called test blind, right? So there are some university which says that we are test blind. What do we mean by that, right? So when you go and do some research, you'll realize some universities say we are test blind, which basically refers to that they will not provide you an option to submit the test score. That means you cannot submit the test score even if you have done the SAT, right? So these colleges don't consider the SAT or ACT exam at all while they are looking at your application and while they're considering you for the admission. Then there is second set of colleges which says we are test optional as of now because of the pandemic. When they say test optional, what do they mean? That basically, if in case, so they will provide you a space to submit your score, whether it's SAT or ACT. However, if in case you want to submit it, you can submit it. If you want to skip it, you can skip it. It's optional, right? However, based on the last 2-year data, what we have looked at, and you talk to any counselor, anybody in this industry, you will realize that what has happened over the last 2 years, though these colleges have said that they're going test optional, but when you look at the results, same profile, same college, same school student, when they have applied to a particular college, we have realized and we have seen that any student who has submitted the SAT score had a better chance to get into the college as opposed to the other student who has not submitted the exam. And there's a reason for it, right? Because when college board said that they're going test optional, what do they mean by it, right? So their main point was, this was largely for countries maybe in Africa and other places where SAT could not happen because of the pandemic. However, if you look at India as a geography, in the last 2 years, there are only two SAT exams which got cancelled, which was last year May and last year, right? Apart from that, everything else happened irrespective of the pandemic situation, right? So what happens if there are 70-75% of students who are applying to this college through India, and if they have done the test, if they have submitted the scores, SAT scores, the colleges consider that you should have done it as well, right? Or you should have a valid reason for not writing the exam. Right? And hence it's become very, very important that you should be submitting your SAT scores, assuming that you get a good score to most of these universities, which are even test option. And hence you are only left with university which are test blind, wherein you don't have to submit it. And that's a very, very small percentage, maybe about 5 to 10%. That's it. The next is the new test is more focused on the skills and knowledge at the heart of education, right? So it measures what you learn in high school and what you need to succeed in college. So basically, the whole idea of college board setting this exam is they want to test and figure out how ready are you for your college, right? So that is the whole idea of keeping this test to figure out your college readiness, right? Let's deep dive into the exam now. So there are 4 sections I've said earlier. Reading section, writing and language, second section. Then you have third and the fourth section, and both of them are math section, which we will go further deep dive. In the reading, you have a total of 65 minutes, and there are total of 52 questions. So you have slightly more than a minute per question to solve it. The maximum you can score here is 400 points, and the minimum that you can get here is 100 points. Same goes for writing and language as well. You have a total of 35 minutes, and you have a total of 44 questions. In terms of scoring, it again varies from 100 to 400 points. And then you have the third and the fourth section, which is no calculator and calculator section. In total, you have a total of 80 minutes, and you have a total of 58 questions. The minimum that you can score here is 200, and the maximum that you can score here is 800. So in totality, you have roughly about 154 questions that you have to solve in about 180 minutes. That's 3 hours. The maximum or the minimum that you can score, the minimum that you can score in SAT is 400. The maximum that you can score is 1600. So that's how the scoring works. Let's deep dive into individual section, right? So the first look at the reading section. As I said, in the reading section, there are a total of 52 questions, and you have a total of 65 minutes. Now, these 52 questions are taken up from 5 different passages. So you will have 5 passages, and each passage will have certain number of questions, which you have to, so you have to read the passage and then answer the question related to that passage, right? So there are a total of 5 passages, and these passages can be further divided into 2 categories. There's something called paired passage, right? So what is paired passage? It's basically a combination of 2 passages, right? So let's say on a particular topic, you might have a viewpoint, I might have a viewpoint, right? When they put in both the viewpoint together, that's called a paired passage. So it's obviously a slightly lengthy passage. So you will always encounter 1 paired passage out of the 5 passages, and 4 are regular passages. So if you look at it, if you do some maths around it, you have about roughly about 13 minutes per passage, and you have about 1 minute 15 seconds per question, right? So that's the time that you have to read the passage and also answer the questions, right? Now, if I further deep dive into these 5 passages, right? So on a broader category, I can say that these passages are taken up from these 3 different sections. For first one is US and world literature, wherein you will always have 1 passage and you have 10 questions. So it could be on any of the US founding document, US Constitution, one of the passages would always be based on that. Then you have another one, which is the history or social studies, right? So you will always have 2 passages from history or social studies with 10 or 11 questions each. Now, one could be a normal passage, one could be a paired passage, or both of them could be a normal passage. And then the third type would be a science section, science type of passages. That means, they probably could pick up some experiment. It could be related to physics, chemistry, bio, earth science. It could be related to any of the sciences. Again, you will have total of two passage. One could be a regular passage, one could be a paired passage, or both of them could be a regular passage with a set of about 10 to 11 questions each, right? So if you closely look at it, here they are not testing you on one particular type of passage, and hence it becomes really, really important. I know there are a lot of parents here on the call whose kids are still in grade 9th, and you have a lot of time to prepare your child well towards this exam. And my only strategy to you would be that, if in case the child is not into reading, make sure they start reading. And not just reading, they should also read from different zones, because if you look at it, they cover US world literature, history, science, social science. They pretty much cover every zone, right? We've had students who are good at fiction, who reads, but the challenge is they're only reading fictional books, right? And hence they kind of struggle with that. They struggle during the exam because it's only one kind of passage that they can do well, and remaining they will struggle, right? So my recommendation here would be, you can start with Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, National Geographic magazines. These are few places where student can go and start reading articles. And the reason I'm recommending these particular places, A, because these are US specific websites, and B, you also need to notice here that, when you go to, let's say, Wall Street Journal, you will get articles from all the different zones, right? History, humanities, social science, right? So you don't have to go to multiple places to find out these passages. You can just take a subscription on one place, and the student can start reading those articles. I think that would be my advice to all the parents whose kids are in grade 9th or in early grade 10th. I think this is a good time for them to start reading, because this is considered to be one of the most difficult section in SAT. As I've said, so this reading section will also have graphs and charts and by scatter plots and everything. So you still have to, especially in the science-based passages, you have to read the passages and answer the question. So that is also part of the reading section. When you look at individual question type in reading section, these are the different question type that they test you on. There's something called vocab in context, right? So you basically, earlier there used to be that, we need to mug up a lot of vocabulary, but that's not the case here. You have to find out vocab in context to that particular line or in context to that passage, right? You have literal comprehension, inference kind of question, infographic, functions, big picture, relationship, rhetorical strategies, tone and attitude. So these are different categories of question types which are being tested upon in SAT in those 52 questions, right? The next section that we have in the exam is the writing section. Please don't get confused with the name. There is no writing as such. You are still, it's still an MCQ based thing wherein you have a total of 44 questions. However, you only have 35 minutes, right? 35 minutes for 44 questions. There are a total of 4 passages, and every passage will have 11 questions here. So you're basically reading the passage. In every passage, they probably would have done some errors intentionally. These are largely grammatical errors, and you have to rectify these errors, right? There are 4 options which would be given to you. You have to figure out which is the best option here, right? So that is what is there in the writing section. If you look at it, if you do the math here, you have roughly about 8 minute 45 second per passage. Every passage is roughly about 400 to 450 words. And average time per question is roughly about 48 seconds. So you have less than 1 minute per question to solve these questions. That obviously means you have to be really quick at it. And hence you really need to be very, very thorough with your grammar rules. Now, if you look at what are the different question types or what are the different skills that they're testing you on, you could broadly categorize these skills into 2 types. One is expression of ideas, and second one is standard English convention. I think this is very, very important here, because though we say that writing section is largely about grammar, but if you actually deep dive into it, what you'll realize that standard English convention is only about 70 to 75% of the writing section, which is testing you on your sentence structure, usage, punctuation, and so on and so forth. However, there is still about 25 to 30% portion which still test your expression of ideas. And what does this expression of idea entails? It basically entails the development, organization, and effective language use, right? How so there would be questions saying that, where will you insert this line? Where will you insert this line in this paragraph? Is this the right order of sentences, right? So to answer those kind of questions, you still have to understand the passage, right? And hence, even in the writing section, indirectly your reading skills are being tested. And hence reading and improving your reading skills becomes far more important, because almost about 25 to 30% portion in writing section is also related to reading, right? So that's another thing to note here, especially in the writing section. When you look at the different question types, these are the different question types which falls under different categories. Let me take the standard English conventions first, right? Under standard English convention, you have, diction, idiom, register, sentence correction, transition, subject verb agreement, pronoun, relative noun, infographics, parallelism, punctuations. The entire grammar stuff is being covered under standard English convention. And then you have expression of idea, which is about 25 to 30% portion out of 44 questions, which will test you on insertion deletion question, sentence and paragraph order. Is this the right order of the sentence? Is this the right order of the paragraph? Redundancy and wordiness, right? Is there some word which can be removed and still gives you the same meaning? So those kind of questions are also part of it, and to answer these kind of questions, you really have to understand the passage well, right? So these are the different question types which are being tested on the writing section. Moving on to the next section, we have maths. And as I said, there are two maths sections. The first one is a maths without calculator, and the other one is maths with calculator. Sorry, the headers are interchanged here. So the no calculator section will have 20 questions in total, wherein there are a total of 15 MCQ questions, and there are a total of 5 grid-in response questions. And you have a total of 25 minutes to solve this question. That means you have roughly about 1 minute, 15 seconds per question in the no calculator based section. The important thing to note here is math is the only section where, apart from MCQ based question, you also have something called grid-in response. And grid-in response is nothing but wherein you have to fill in your answers in the boxes and there are no options, right? So one has to be prepared for these kind of questions as well. However, the weightage for both, whether it's an MCQ based question or a grid-in response question, is same. There is no difference in terms of the weightage of question. The fourth section, which is the last section, is your calculator math section, wherein you have a total of 38 questions, out of which there are 30 MCQs and 8 grid-in response questions. And you have a total of 55 minutes. That means you have roughly about 1 minute, 20 seconds per question in the calculator based section, right? Now, in this entire test, the important thing to note here is there is no negative marking, right? So it's important that when you're attempting the test, make sure, even if you've not done everything, you should, do an guesswork, because you are not being penalized for anything. And hence it's important that you make sure that you're attempting every question. Even if you ran out of time, you should do some guesswork at the end. Now, when I deep dive into math section, what are they testing you on, right? So if I look at what SAT uses terminologies, right? They categorize math into 4 categories. They call it as heart of algebra, which largely covers, in our terms, linear equation, inequalities, functions, graphs. So any topic or any question related to these topics falls under heart of algebra. There are roughly about 19 questions out of 58 questions that comes from heart of algebra. So pretty high weightage. Then you have second, which is passport to advanced math. Passport to advanced math will include all the non-linear equation or expression. It'll also includes exponential functions and so on. So anything which is non-linear will be part of passport to advanced math, the quadratic equation, the quadratic functions, all of that is part of passport to advanced math, wherein you have a total of 17 questions. The third one is the problem solving and data analysis, wherein you have a total of 16 questions. The problem solving, as the name suggests here, right? It's all about data here. So you have ratio, rate, percentage, proportion, statistics, probability, charts, graphs, tables, all of that is part of problem solving and data analysis. And you have roughly about 16 questions out of 58 questions that come from problem solving and data analysis. And then you have the last major header, which is the additional topics in maths, which covers your geometry, trigonometry, and problems with complex number. But if you look at it, there are only 6 questions that comes out of total of 58 questions in the additional topics in maths, right? So I think if you look at it, the first three are the major section, and additional topics is a very, very small percentage, which includes your geometry and trigonometry and complex number, right? And when we do the next webinar, when we are talking about ACT and when we deep dive into ACT, you will realize that the major difference between these two tests is it lies right here, right? SAT is very, very algebra heavy, as opposed to ACT, which is 50% algebra, but you also have 50% of geometry, trigonometry, complex number. You have a good weightage of geometry, coordinate geometry, plane geometry, solid geometry. You have a good percentage of those kind of questions also in ACT. However, in SAT, they rely a lot more on algebraic equation, algebraic expression, functions, and so on and so forth, right? So that's also one of the important factor when you're considering whether you should be doing an SAT or an ACT. Now, so since we have already covered about all the 4 sections that we have, which is reading, writing, and maths, no calculator, and calculator, what do I do? How do I ace the SAT test, right? Is there any mantra to it, right? And very, very, standard stuff that I'm going to talk about, but everything is very, very important here. Build strong reading habits, right? As I've told you, the entire reading section relies on your reading comprehension. How well do you comprehend? How quickly can you comprehend? How correctly can you comprehend? And honestly speaking, there is no shortcut for reading, right? If you're an avid reader, if you've been reading for years, you would do well. If not, you will improve with certain prep and help and all of that. But after a point of time, you will hit a ceiling and you will not be able to move to the next level, right? And hence, I would request any student who is in grade 9th and grade 10th to start building a strong reading habit, right? Start as early as possible, maybe 7th and 8th grade itself, right? And don't read it because of the SAT, but in general, right? Second is start early, ideally from grade 10th beginning itself. And I think that's a very, very important factor. Now, why do I say that start early in the grade 10th beginning, right? Because a lot of parents have this notion, and I think that's coming from the fact that, we all have gone through that 10th board exams and 12th board exams, so they're really critical and so on and so forth, without realizing that I agree with you that 10th is really, really important, and, there are boards and all of that. But at the same point of time, if you see, as compared to 11th grade, right? Whether you are doing IBDP, whether you are doing ASA level, whether you're doing ISC, whether you're doing CBSE grade 11th and 12th, the jump from grade 10 to grade 11th is at least 10x, right? So you really, really need to, put in a lot of effort to do well in grade 11th. And hence what we are suggesting here is, you start your prep in grade 10th along with your board prep as well, right? You take it slow, maybe do a longer duration course, maybe take about 8-10 months and then do it, but try and finish in grade 10 because that's where you have most of the time. Once you get into grade 11th, your academic picks up really, really well, and it becomes really difficult to cope up along with your grade 11th. And I'm sure there are a few parents who have gone through this journey with their elder kids, and they probably would have realized this as well. Third is avoid silly mistakes. I think that's very normal. It's tough to do, but there are ways and there are methods to kind of try and apply those methods. One of the methods is obviously to go back and keep rechecking what you have done to avoid these silly mistakes. Do proper planning. I think that's very, very critical. Do the right planning, start prepping at the right time. Make sure, the college prep journey is for the 4-year, and we're going to take that in our timelines slide as well. Practice test at home under timed condition to avoid any shocks during the actual exam day. What do I mean by that? So all of us are aware that SAT happens early in the morning at 8 a.m. on Saturday, right? So when you're also practicing at home, try and make sure you're trying to simulate the same exam environment, right? So you sit at 8 a.m. in the morning on Saturday morning and try and do this exam at home, and do it at one single stretch. One of the biggest mistake that a lot of students end up doing while they are practicing, they would do really well, they will practice well. In the practice test, they'll get really good score, but when they go to the actual exam, they will falter, right? And then there's a big question, why did that happen, right? And when we go back and analyze it, we realize that, what student did, they ended up taking breaks in between, which is not right? Because that's not what you get in the final exam. Remember, SAT is also an endurance test, right? Because no matter which curriculum you're coming from up until grade 10, you don't really write too many exams, which are 3-hour long tests, right? Here, you're writing a 3-hour long test, so you have to stay focused for 3 hours, which is not really easy for a lot of students, right? And hence it's important that you simulate the same exam environment, irrespective of how many tests you do, but you should simulate the same exam environment. That's very, very important. Since we have covered the SAT, I've added maybe 2 slides here to talk about PSAT as well, just to give you very, very important information here. What is PSAT? PSAT is nothing but a practice SAT. And you can write it in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, whenever you want to. This is organized by the school. It happens only once a year. If you want to write it, you should go and talk to your school. If in case your school does not conduct it in your city, figure out which school does it, and then you can register with that school and you can write an exam. Why should I write a PSAT, right? So there are various reasons why one can write PSAT or why one should write PSAT. One is obviously, if in case, you want to understand where you stand globally at this point of time, because it gives you a score in terms of percentile. That could be one reason. Second is, I've seen a lot of, grade 10 student writing the PSAT exam because they want to apply for summer schools, right? And some of the summer schools ask you to submit the PSAT score if in case you have done it just for the scholarship sake, right? So that is also one of the reasons why some people write PSAT. And I think the most important reason, and please note that, if in case your child is a US citizen and the student is in grade 11, they should definitely do a PSAT, because PSAT in grade 11 is also known as NMSQT, which is National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So you basically get eligible for a certain set of scholarship if in case you qualify the PSAT. However, this is only for US citizens, students who are US citizens, US born, and they have to do this PSAT in grade 11th. If they do it in grade 10th, it is not considered under NMSQT. So please note that important point. Now, how are these two tests different from each other? I would say PSAT is just a subset of SAT. Here again, just like SAT, there are 4 sections: reading, writing, maths no calculator, and maths calculator. The only difference, if you really notice here, is number of questions. So if you look at it in the reading section, you have only 47 questions in 60 minutes as opposed to 52 questions in 65 minutes in SAT, right? And scaling also changes. It varies from 160 minimum to 760 maximum, as opposed to 200 minimum to 800 maximum. Writing section, no change. 44 question, 35 minutes, 44 question, 35 minutes. Maths, obviously there is a change. In maths no calculator section, you have 17 question, 25 minutes, as opposed to 20 question and 25 minutes in SAT. In calculator section, you have 31 question and 45 minutes, as opposed to 38 question, 55 minutes. There is no essay. Sorry, this slide has to be updated. There is no essay in PSAT or SAT. There used to be a SAT essay, but it's no longer there. It's being discontinued now. So you don't have an essay component in SAT now. So PSAT is a 2-hour 45-minute test. SAT is a 3-hour long test. PSAT, the highest that you can score is 1520, and SAT, the highest you can score is 1600. So that's how the scoring works between the PSAT and ACT. Hope that is clear. Now, next, most importantly, let's talk about the timelines. Right? We have been talking about, making sure that we are doing a proper planning, right? So what do I mean by that, right? What is the best recommended planning as per ReWiser, right? I will look at this college prep journey as 4-year journey, right? Between grade 9, 10th, 11, and 12th, right? That is when you become serious and you start focusing on this. The earlier you start, the better it is always. But let's assume that you started in grade 9, right? So in grade 9th, I think what you need to start working on, or you would probably be doing, is your PSAT in school. I think PSAT is something that will give you a clear understanding in terms of where you are in as of today for SAT. You can always start your, if in case you are not an avid reader, you should start building your reading habits. I think that would help you in your grade 10th and 11th when you come and write the SAT. That is what you can do in grade 9. Focus a lot more. So when I talk about IGCSE or IB curriculum, we know that grade 9th and 10th are clubbed together, and most of the school cover most of the grade 10 syllabus by grade 9th itself, right? Almost about 70%. They only leave about 25 to 30% for grade 10th. So in grade 9th, you spend a lot of time on your academics and make sure you are doing well there and try and make sure you cover most of your content as well for your grade 10th. Because when you come to grade 10, then you can now pick up your SAT prep as well, right? So this is the time when you can write your SAT diagnostic. Our recommendation is, so there is another test called ACT, American College Test, which is a competition to SAT. You can also write ACT, and we'll be doing another webinar where, just like today's webinar, we have gone through SAT. We will deep dive into ACT as well and explain you what ACTs are. But just to give you a very high level understanding, SAT or ACT are equally acceptable in US. You can write either of the exam and no college will ask you for a specific score, whether it's SAT or ACT. So the first step for the child would be to write a diagnostic test, write a diagnostic for SAT, which is a 3-hour long test, write a diagnostic for ACT, again a 3-hour long test. See which one are you more comfortable with, right? Is it an SAT? Is it an ACT? And based on that, you kind of take a call, which one do you want to prepare for, or which one do you want to write, right? Then you start preparing for a particular exam, and then you write your SAT towards the end of grade 10th or early grade 11th. So SAT happens 5 times a year, which is March, May, August, October, and December. So these are the 5 dates when SAT happens. Now, what I'm recommending is for a grade 10 student, and let me categorize them into 2 categories, right? Students who are coming from international curriculum, which is IGCSE, IB, A levels, GCSE. For all those students, I would recommend, you try and write your exam towards March when you are in grade 10th, right? So if you're starting grade 10 now, next year, March would be your target date to finish your first attempt of SAT. I'm assuming you're writing your school exam in May, June, right? So that before your school, 2 months before your school board exam, you have finished your first attempt of SAT, and then you write your second attempt in the month of August, not in May, obviously, because you focus on your boards, but you can write it in August, because by the time your boards or your IB would have just started, your grade 11th would have just started, right? However, on the other side, when we talk about CBSE and ICSE student or state board student, my strategy slightly varies here. I recommend them to start with English prep only when they are in grade 10 and slowly add the maths later. The reason is, what we have realized, the maths that you do in CBSE and ICSE is a slightly lower level maths, and they find it slightly difficult to cope up with the SAT maths all of a sudden. And hence we want them to have gone through the grade 10 syllabus at least midway through their 10th grade, and then start preparing for grade 10 maths or SAT maths. So for them, the first attempt could be May of right after their boards are done, right? So let's say if their boards are done in March, they can do their first attempt of SAT in the month of May that year, right? So that's how the timelines could vary. And then the second attempt could be again in August or October of their grade 11, right? So that could be the timeline. There is an important test that I have also mentioned here. This is subject SAT, which is right here, but please note, I'll update that. Please note that subject SATs are no longer being offered across the globe. College Board has stopped giving subject SATs, and they don't hold any value now. The only thing which is important now is AP exams, right? So what is AP? AP stands for Advanced Placement Courses. And again, since today it's not under our purview to discuss AP, we'll be doing separate webinar where we'll be discussing about APs. However, if you wish to know more, you can drop us a message or a mail, and we can share one of our old webinar recording with you for you to understand AP. So AP is an exam for which, you write this exam to get credits, to showcase additional strength in your academic rigor. And obviously you save cost and money, because if you are getting credits while you are in India, you're saving money as well, right? So these are various reasons why one writes AP. And we have students right now. So AP happens only once a year, which is in the month of May, right? And hence it becomes really, really important for you to plan your AP really well, because unlike SAT or ACT, which happens 5 to 6 times a year, AP happens only once a year. So there are students who will write one AP probably at the end of grade 9th, another AP, let's say at the end of grade 10th, and maybe another AP at the end of grade 11th, right? Now, it's not mandatory that you have to write 3 APs. It all depends on your appetite and how you are building your profile and your application. But you should plan well ahead of time. And based on when you are writing your AP, you also need to smartly pick your subjects, right? And again, in our next webinar, we're going to cover that. How do you choose which AP subjects to take? There are almost about 20 plus AP subjects. There's calculus, there's statistics, there is mechanics, there is physics, there is chemistry, there's bio, there is psychology, there is economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, statistics. There are a lot of AP subjects. So how do you pick which is the right AP for you? We're going to discuss that also in our upcoming webinars. So that's something that you should be doing in grade 11 towards the end of grade 11. You could also do that at the end of grade 12th. However, if you're doing that at the end of grade 12th, you're writing APs only for college credits and not for your application, because your applications are gone by the time you already have admission. If you're writing it after grade 12, it's purely for college credits, right? So that's how the entire testing timelines look like. I know these timelines will, this is a generic timeline, and we are more than happy to, sit one-on-one with you, with the child, and, help you make one of these timelines for you, depending on where you are in which grade at this point of time and what your objective is. Feel free to, connect back with us again, and we are happy to, have a one-on-one conversation with you to help you make this entire timeline. Now, this very, very important question that a lot of people ask, right? My plan A is, let's say, to study abroad. But I also want to keep plan B, which is studying in India, right? For whatever reason, right? We have seen what has happened in the last 2 years because of pandemic, right? What if something of this sort happens again? So for that reason, please note that there are almost about 30 plus universities now, and they're adding on daily basis as we are talking. There are 30 plus universities in India which accept SAT scores, and some of them are very, very famous universities that you probably would have heard about. Ashoka University, Azim Premji University, Flame, Kriya, Manav Rachna, Plaksha, Shivnadar, SRM, Shrishti School of Design. These are few of the universities which are accepting SAT scores. Now, it's very, very important to note here, right? If in case you want to apply to Ashoka, Azim, and Flame and Kriya, let's say 4 universities, right? Instead of writing 4 entrance exams, which each of these colleges are conducting at their, on their own as well, you could write a standard exam, which is SAT, which could help you for study abroad, which can also help you to apply to all these 4 colleges, right? So I think that's a better approach rather than trying to write different exams for different universities. So I think that is also one of the reasons why some people are writing SATs in India now, because they want to apply for these universities also, right? So I think there's a link here, right? international.collegeboard.org, which tells you what is the entire list of universities which are accepting SAT scores, and for what degree are they accepting the SAT scores, right? So that also something that you will get to know from this link, and you can go and probably check there. Okay, before I go and talk about our pedagogy, I think I would like to cover one more thing which is not there in the slide, and which is an important thing is SAT starting March 2023 is changing the pattern, and SAT will be done on a new pattern starting March of 2023, which is very, very, very critical at this point of time for all the students and the parents who are attending the webinar to note. Because if you look at it, we only have May. May is already gone. We have August. I mean, there is May, but what I mean is, you don't have enough time to prepare for it now, right? So there is August, there is October, there is December. These are the only 3 dates apart from May that you have wherein you could write the SAT in the existing format that we have just discussed. If in case you plan to do your SAT in March next 2023 or later than March, then the format is changing. And I'll tell you, so there is very little news out in the market, but the news so far is that the test is going to be a shortened version. It'll only be a 2-hour long test as opposed to 3-hour long test, which is there right now. It'll be an online test. So far, SAT is a pen and paper test. Starting March 2023, SAT will be an online test. Though you still have to go to a test center and do this exam, but it will be an online test. It'll be a shorter test. There are only 2 sections in the exam. One would be maths and another one would be English. And under English, you'll have reading and writing. Another important change here is you will be allowed to use calculator all throughout your math section, which is very, very important change, because if you have noticed, though we have not covered it here, but SET has one section which is calculator, another one without calculator. On the other hand, ACT, the entire math, there's only one math section which is with calculator. And that used to be one of the major difference between the two exams. However, now SAT has moved or they're moving completely towards calculator section of maths. So you don't have to worry about if you are one of those who, who doesn't like to work without the calculator. So that's another change which is happening. One of the major change which is happening is that this test is going to be adaptive in nature. So far, because this test was offline, there was no adaptiveness, but now going forward, this test will be adaptive. So that means they're going to give a first section, which is standard to each and every student. And post first section, depending on your performance, they would decide whether you would get an X paper or a Y paper or a Z paper. So your test paper would change for each exam itself, right? For each student, depending on your performance in first section, which is common for everybody, right? That is what test adaptiveness means, right? That's a lot of change to the exam, and hence our recommendation is right now, if in case you can, please try and finish your SAT in this year itself by December 2022, so that you don't have to write your, you don't become a guinea pig, next year. Honestly speaking, why I'm saying that, because, unfortunately, they're testing this out online SAT outside of US next year. But for the US student, they'll be doing it only 2024. So all of us are sort of guinea pig for them right now next year. And post that, they would also apply this in US, right? So you would not want to experiment it out and try and finish it before March if you can, if possible, right? So that's about the changes that has happened. Now let me quickly go through our pedagogy, how we kind of cover this exam. There are 4 phases. That's how we help students prepare. Phase 0 is about a diagnostic test, wherein you write your SAT and ACT diagnostic. It basically helps you to figure out where you are at this point of time, which is an ideal test for you, and so on and so forth. Then you move to phase 1. Phase 1 is where there are classes happening along with the assignments. This is where you are doing the content mastery. There are roughly about 50 hours of classes for maths, reading, and writing. And after every session that you do, you have equal amount of assignments. So if you're doing a 2-hour class, you have 2 hours of assignment that you need to do. And every class is 2.5-hour long session. After every session and assignment, you have to update something called a score tracker, based on which you will get the feedback from your mentor. This is what happens in phase 1. This is where you're learning the concept. Then you move to phase 2. Phase 2 is the place where you're doing a lot of sectional tests. And this is the point where a mentor gets introduced to you. This mentor will look at all your score performance from phase 1 scores. And based on that, figure out what areas, what section, what topic you're not doing well, where do you need more help. And they will customize this plan for you depending on the areas where you need help. Right? So that is what happens in phase 2. The idea here is to make sure that you do start getting the right scores in individual sections. Once that gets over, you move to next phase, which is phase 3. That's largely about full length tests, wherein you'll be doing at least about 15 to 20 full tests before you write your final exam. And every test that you write, you get a detailed report analysis saying what areas you've done well, what areas you need to improve, and so on and so forth. So all of that happens in phase 3. So, if you look at it, you're doing a concept mastery in phase 1, you're doing speed and accuracy mastery in phase 2, and you're doing an endurance mastery in phase 3. That's how you're kind of getting prepared for your final attempt. At ReWiser, we have different modules. SAT full training covers all the 4 phases. SAT study plan is for the students who are already doing well. They only need some guidance. They don't need the classes. They can take a self-study course and a study plan course, which only includes phase 2 that I've just discussed, where you have a mentor and you get all the material from us, but you don't take classes. Then there's another one, which is SAT Lite, wherein you don't take classes, you don't take material, you only take practice tests. You get 10 practice tests along with the detailed answer explanations. That is what is covered under SAT Lite. And this is for the students, who are already scoring really, really high and they just need more practice material, right? That is where the SAT Lite comes into picture. So these are all the modules. There are different other modules as well, which we can discuss one-on-one separately as well post this webinar. But yeah, these are some of the major modules that we cover at this point of time. So with that, I've covered everything. I've covered everything on the presentation. So I think it's already 11:50. So I'll open the floor for Q&As. We already have a couple of questions on the chat section. If there are more questions, feel free to drop the questions right here and we'll have a look at it. Okay, I'll start taking questions from the chat section. The first question that I have is, are there any suggested website to practice reading comprehensions? Yeah, Shlok. So, you can always practice from Khan Academy. Khan Academy is a very, very good resource. You could go there and start practicing. That will help you a lot. So I think that's something that you can start, and it's free of cost. Anybody can start there. It's for reading, writing, maths, everything, right? So that's a good start point. Second, share this PPT. Sorry, we will not be able to share this PPT, but we will be sharing the recording of the webinar. So you could probably have a look at any point that you want to through the recording. Third question that I have is PSAT only for American citizens? Not at all. Anybody can write the PSAT. What I meant was, when you write PSAT in grade 11, and if you are an American citizen, then you qualify for something called NMSQT, which is National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, right? So if in case you just want to understand where you stand at this point of time globally, you can write the PSAT in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. It doesn't really matter at all. And anybody can write the PSAT. There is no restriction about the citizenship for writing the PSAT. I hope that answers the question. Cool. Any other questions that we have? These are the questions that I can see right now in the chat section that I've taken.
Raj,
are there more questions? Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't type the question, but I thought I'll ask here. First thing is, I think the test is changing in next year, right?
That's right.
So that is it like an optional change, or you have to pick the new one?
Right. So as of now, they have not made it very clear, but looks like it's going to be a mandatory change. They will not offer the older version of SAT starting March 2023 onwards. That's what the news is right now. But honestly speaking, Raju, I think they will. So far, they've only done one press release, and this is all the information that they have released. We are still waiting for more.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I'm asking is, I heard the UC system, they are coming up with their own kind of a test.
No. So on that, I can give you a clarification that the proposal went up, and that proposal is being rejected now. So UCs, because UCs have already been test blind. So UCs are one of those colleges which were already test blind, right?
But they test blind, but they wanted to do their own thing.
Correct. But that proposal is being rejected because of the financial constraint. They realized that just for the UCs, they cannot have a separate exam. It will not work out financially. So the upper level court has rejected the proposal. So that is being rejected now.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And on the similar lines, let's say kid writes an exam this year, which is in the old pattern, and then you want to redo the exam. So how does it work? Do they? I mean, they'll have two types of scores, right? One is on the 2-hour test, and
Yeah. No, you're right, and that's where it's slightly tricky. So, but I think the way I see it is right. Whether you write the previous attempt or a new test, you will always get a percentile, right? So for them, score is not such an important criteria. I think the important criteria here is the percentile, right? So that's what they're going to rely on rather than on the the raw score per se.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But only thing is, like, it is better if you are planning to do like twice. Give it like maybe beginning of the year, like in August timeframe, one test, and maybe December or something.
Ideally, yes. If somebody can plan it out, that's what we would recommend. That try and do one in August, second in December, or one in October and second one in December, and get it done with. And then move on to doing other stuff.
So when is the latest? This is for my son. He's getting into 11th. He's in IB. He's taking IB and currently IGCSE 10th grade.
Got it.
His exams are getting over by May. So when can he take the earliest, you think? After
So
going through the
October.
reviser module, I mean, I want to
October
know
is
how.
the earliest that he can write,
Not
right? Because I think his
August is too
exams will get over
too
by,
early.
sorry, August would be too early, right? Because his exam will get over only by 4th of June, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, May ending
Correct,
or 4th. Okay.
correct, correct. So if you look at it, then you're only left with 3 months, right? June, July, and August to prepare
Okay.
for August attempt.
And
Yeah.
then your training module is for 2 months, or what's if
No,
they're
it takes at least about 4 5 months at least, right? And that also because he will have 2 months break. So I think there he can ramp it up and increase the speed, and might be able to write October. He should write October. First attempt in October, and then second he should finish it up by December.
got it. Okay. So then our target for October is better, you're saying. Okay.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
And on the scores wise test, blind test, by the way, my daughter has gone through your same training and she got
Right.
into the admissions also. So when we are applying, UC is the test blind, and then
Right.
there are a few others are blind, test blind, and then there are test optional is there.
Right.
We did apply. We don't know really whether they are considering, not considering
Correct.
the scores when they're announcing the results. How do we? Is there a way to figure it out, or?
There is no way to figure it out. The only way we are kind of coming to any conclusion is just by comparing two student profiles and saying, this child has submitted it, this child has not submitted it. We were actually doing a presentation 2 days back in one of the international schools in Bangalore, and I was talking to their counselor, right? And she and obviously they deal with about 100 plus student every year, right? So she herself said that, based on her experience this year admission, what she has realized, the schools which were test optional, and if the student has not submitted the SAT scores or the ACT scores, the child has got deferred admission as opposed to the student who has submitted the score, right? And it's, logically speaking, that makes sense, because if you look at it, if in case, you have to have a reason for not submitting the score, right? If 70%, 80% of Indians are submitting it, that basically showcases that exam is happening, right? So why did you not do it, right? So that becomes a bit of a question mark, right? So either you just try and justify it in your application, or else it slightly becomes trickier.
No.
I'll
It
explain.
could be that the kid may not have written it also, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. But that becomes an important point there, right? That why did you not write it when others could write it, right? So either you have that sort of a story in your, when you're writing your application, saying why did you not write it, right?
So basically,
I
you
could
could
not.
say, I would rather focus on doing some internship or project or something to
You
best
have to show
utilize my
something
time.
else which is substantial. Yes.
Somewhere you can mention it in that
Yes.
fashion.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But they wouldn't know, right, whether the kid has written and not submitted or.
They wouldn't know. You're right.
Hmm.
They wouldn't know. It's all about, how convincingly you can probably write your essay, and it's the same thing, right? They don't know the kid. It's through the essays and the entire application, they're trying to make a picture of and visualize the child, right? And then give the admission to the child, right? So same thing here as well. They wouldn't know, but based on the application, what you write, I think they are gonna take a call.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
I also have another. Yeah, sorry,
one
please.
last question from my side. So let's say my son goes through this training, start writing it, and
Right.
he may want to do the new pattern also. So this training is completely going to be redesigned and retaught.
Yes, it'll be redesigned, but the kind of information that we have got, they're not gonna change the question types or the concepts that they're covering or the topics that they're covering. That will remain the same. The only thing is the number of questions will reduce, the total time will reduce, right? So whatever child would have gone through and child would have understood, all of it is useful. The only thing that they will have to do is, the child will have to get used to the new pattern of exam.
And the
Right.
timing, yeah,
And the
because
timing part, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly, right? So by new pattern, I mean, the new set of question, right now, the train that first they will have reading, then writing, then maths, right? Now it will change. Right? It'll change slightly. So they'll have to tune their brain accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Raj. Maybe we'll connect offline to do this registration.
Definitely. Thanks, Raju. Thanks for your time. I have another question here. What is the validity of SAT score? The scores are valid for 5 years, Mr. Jagan. So the scores are valid for 5 years. Yes. Any other questions? Since it's 12 now, we'll wait for another minute if there are more questions.
Hello, Rajdeep. My question is, I was little late for the session. Like, I want to know, like, my confusion is, in a year there are 4 tests. So how many? Sorry, 5. So how many tests one has to clear, or how many tests one has to sit for?
Oh, okay. No. So that's not how it is. You know, it's all about how many times you want to write it, right? You can only write once, get a good score, and stop it there, right?
Okay.
Right. So, or you can write it 2 times but there has to be reason for it, right? So let's say I got a 1450 and but I'm targeting 1500 plus, right? So I'll write second attempt and try and push myself and get a 1500 plus score, right? So that's the reason why I'm writing the second attempt, right? So you have to have a reason why you are writing it. 2 is an ideal number. Almost, I would say 80-85% people write twice. Very few students also write thrice. But we generally recommend that, you can stop at twice. Few kids do write thrice, and very few kids will write only once, because, there are few colleges which also accept super score, right? What is super score? By super score, I mean you can submit English from one test and maths from the other test.
Okay.
Right. And hence it's important to write it twice, because when you're super scoring, it'll always be, your super score will always be better than your individual test score, right? So if you've done it twice.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So
like, suppose someone is not doing so great in the first attempt, so he can go for the second one, and if he scores well, or so he can stop there and submit, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks.
Perfect.
So this is your number. That's how I can connect to you.
Yes, this is Sharath from my team. This is Sharath's number, so you can reach out to this number, and he'll be able to take it forward from here.
Okay. Thanks, Raj.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for joining in on Saturday morning. And we'll be doing another one on ACT, then another one on AP. So we will send out mails to you when we are doing that. So if you, in case you're interested, please do register for that as well. And thanks again for joining in. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you.